Is this team still finding its defensive identity? And what would you like to see on that end from this group?
Well, no, I think we have a defensive identity. It's just being consistent with it. You know, um, we probably defended Auburn as well as anybody at a certain point, and then we got inconsistent. I mean, there's a reason we're up 9 on Auburn. There's a reason we went from down 8 to up 4 versus Alabama. It's because not because you're scoring, it's because you're getting stops. If you're trading basket with them, you never catch up or you never build a lead. So we have a defensive identity. Um, sometimes a substitution, we make a substitution, there's a mistake. We're up 12, I think now 11 versus San Diego State. Um, we've always, prided ourselves on playing. We're just not consistent enough yet, and those are things that we've been working on this week. Some of the things.
Thank you, Chris. We go to Chancellor Johnson from KPRC TV. Chancellor, please go ahead, sir.
Hey, good morning, Kelvin.
Good morning, Chancellor.
With the program's recent success over the past few years, obviously there's a number of guys on the team who aren't used to some of these early season losses. I know you guys aren't far off, but how can some of these losses maybe help drive the point that you guys aren't where you guys want to be? And just maybe potential motivation in addition to obviously what you're doing, the message that you're preaching to the players.
Um, well, I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask them that. Um, um, you know, each one of the games we've lost, we've been in a position to win. It's more not about worrying about the losses, it's figuring out how to be better in certain periods of the game. Like from the 15-minute mark to the 8-minute mark in the second half, 8-minute mark to the 4-minute mark, and then closing the game out. You know, when we watch film with our team, we point out areas that some of it is breaks a little bit, I guess. Against Auburn, we're playing really good defense, and next thing you know, they bank 2 balls in. The night against San Diego State, we're playing great defense, and they bank a ball in. The kid has no shot. And then the fouls, putting teams on Alabama goes to the line 41 times. We got a lot of untimely things like that. The things that are in our control are the things we have to do better at. You're asking me about stuff that really doesn't matter to me. Losing a basketball game. I mean, what are we talking about here? We haven't forgotten how to win. The difference in this year's team and last year's team is the schedule. Last year's team might be 4-3 if we played this schedule. They might have been. But last year, our 3 toughest games in non-conference was at Xavier that we won, and then we beat Utah, Dayton, and can't remember who that. Towson, was that right? Somebody like that. So that team won all those games with 13-0. Then they got the conference play and lost 2 in a row. This team lost to Alabama. I think everybody knows how good they are. It's not a fluke that we're in a position to win. I mean, we played better down the stretch. We probably would have won that game. And same thing with Auburn. Auburn's pretty good. San Diego State was probably I was more disappointed in that game. But it also brings up things, that, hey, we got to clean this up or we got to clean that up. It's not one thing, you know. Um, being in a position to win all those games mean we're doing something right. So you accentuate the positive and you focus on the things that we need to get better at. I was talking to Nate the other day. I think they lost 5 games in our conference. If if you have the courage to play this kind of schedule, you know that this can happen. But I think you have to use it to make you better, learn from it, and move on down the road, man.
Thank you, Chancellor. We'll go to Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle. Joseph, please go ahead.
Good morning, Kelvin.
Morning.
Kelvin, back on the consistency part, whether it's offense or defense, is it a matter of it just takes time with with new guys, or is it repetition, practice? How do you sort of get that consistency with this group?
All of that. The thing that I think a hallmark of all our teams is just getting better. Whatever it is we need to be better at. It's not going to show up right away. We're not going to show up the next game and all of a sudden be this offensive juggernaut where we score 90 points. I've always thought the strength of what we do is how we use it to win the game. That's what's been a little bit different is we're losing games that, and we're right there to win it. But with this group, having a different point guard means that we have to play more to his strengths, and he has strengths. And I think Milos has done some good things. Offensively, we've got to clean up our spacing and give ourselves room, and not just half court, but full court. Being able to score more in transition, being able to play at a quicker pace, being able to not have the game look so much like a grind sometime. But there really is no set answer to any of that. I just you've been coaching long enough, and you look at your team and say, "Here's areas we need to get better." You go to practice and you work and work and work and get better at it, and go to the next game, see if you've improved. But that doesn't mean you've solved the problem. It's a year-long thing. With last year's team, or the year before, I mean, we've had 11 teams here. They all ran into stuff over the course of even when we were winning, that you could tell that there were some problems in what we're doing that we've got to get corrected. And this team's no different.
Thank you, Joseph. We'll go back to Chris Baldwin. Go ahead, Chris.
Kelvin, how has JVR looked in practice, and do you think this group is getting better, health-wise? How do you see that, coming along?
Yeah, I think JVR, first of all, he's a great kid. He's having his moments, but he's just making boneheaded mistakes. Like, we switch big screens, for instance, and we always have a up and under policy. So whoever man is getting screened, if I'm guarding the guy with the ball and I'm receiving the screen, well, that guy gets under to take away the roll. But more importantly, the other guy has to move up to take away the three. But JVA stayed in a straight line and gave up 2 threes. He knows better than that. 6 points. The game goes to overtime. We're making too many mistakes like that. But you watch film and get it corrected. I know JVR is a winner, as all our kids are. I mean, they've proven that. Just because you lose a game doesn't mean you've changed anything or need to start over. You just need to be more diligent with the details, little things. Difference in winning and losing is not something big. It's usually something little, like coverage calls. We've had too many busted coverage calls. We haven't switched appropriately. Our guards aren't blocking out consistently. All those things are correctable, and that's why we go to practice and correct them.
Thank you, Chris. We'll go back to Joseph Duarte. Go ahead, Joseph.
Is there a fine line between how you want and maybe need Milos to play versus getting in position to have fouls, trouble, that kind of stuff?
I didn't understand your
Well,
question.
well, obviously, I think you mentioned a while back about him and that position and how I guess the attacking part of it and maybe some physical part of it. But is it sort of has it been difficult for him to sort of adjust to that style, and maybe that's why he's picking up the fouls, or is it just situations that he gets into that sort of have led to that many early on in the year?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think his I don't think he's that far off. Um, you know, he's not going to be the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, or the National Defensive Player of the Year, but he's not bad. Um, you know, um, Milos is good at different things. Being able to stay down in the stance and and keep your nose on the ball as the ball's changing directions. Sometimes that's a want to thing. You know, as we have some guys, young guys especially struggle with that. But you know, if you look around, every time somebody plays a game, somebody loses. I watched a bunch of teams lose last night that are really, really good. Um, so, you know, when you're this early in the year, your team is still learning. Um, you know, if I really wanted to trick y'all, I'd play an easy schedule and we'd be 7-0, and everybody be running around here talking about how good we are. Well, we're not far off from being really good. You know, at some point in the Auburn game, we're up 9. At some point in the Alabama game, we went from down 8 to up 4. So that's a 12-point difference. San Diego State, we're up 11. So that team is out there on the floor doing whatever it is, all the problems y'all was throwing at me that we're having. That same team is up, had a 12-point difference against Alabama, up 9 on Auburn. It's like I said at the start. The answer to every question I've been asked is we've got to get better at details and become more consistent in not making those detail mistakes. When we do that, we'll start winning.
We'll go to Chris Baldwin, please. Go ahead, Chris.
Calvin, when you look around at the very top of college basketball, is there more parity, this year
Chris,
than
I've been asked that question every year for 20-some years. There's no more parity than it was last year. There's no more parity than it was the year before. Teams are going to lose. There's no upsets. Creighton beat Kansas last night. That's not an upset. It was at Creighton. You know, Duke beat Auburn. That's not an upset. It was at Auburn. Um, Alabama at North Carolina. That just shows you how good Alabama is. But there's no great teams. There's just a lot of really good teams. Um, um, and I think we can be one of those teams eventually. We're not there yet. But there is no great teams. I've only seen one great teams. That we've only played one great team since I've been here, and that was Baylor in the semifinals of the Final Four. Every other team we played, we weren't that good. Even if we beat them, it was probably pretty close. They could have beat us, or if they beat us, it wasn't that far off. We could have beat them. No, I don't see any great teams this year. But we have a lot of really good teams on certain nights. You know, we played 2 of the 5 best teams in America so far, Alabama and Auburn. We played a San Diego State team that's probably going to be a 5, 6, or 7 seed. Unfortunately, we lost to them. But we could be sitting here 7-0 playing the schedule we've played, but we're not. So what we've got to do, and it starts with me, is I got to coach them up better. I got to work on these things and correct some of these mistakes and challenge our kids to be more consistent. And that's kind of what we're doing.
We'll go back to Chancellor Johnson. Chancellor, please go ahead.
Kelvin, speaking of scheduling, there was a high-profile coach recently who mentioned that he was good off of playing on some of the non-conference tournaments. I'm curious, coming off of Vegas, what do you like about some of those early non-conference tournaments versus the home and homes in the kind of single game that you have each year?
Well, if you look at a lot of the teams in the Big 12, they don't play anybody because then they've got 20 fistfights coming down the road. And you're fine doing that. You got last year we had 18 conference games, which means you had 13 non-conference games. This year you have 20, and now you have 11. You think about in those 11 games, we're going to play Alabama, Auburn, San Diego State, a Butler team that nobody has any idea how good they are. The casual fan won't understand how good Butler is. Mississippi State's pretty good. Mississippi State beat Pittsburgh last night by 30-some. Well, Butler beat Mississippi State. Butler's very capable of coming here and beating us if we don't get more consistent. Um, um, and until we do, winning and loses and play every game you play. Um, you know, I think this team is on a good trajectory. In some ways, these losses, I think, will help us down the road. But we have a good team. I don't think we're a great team. I don't think we're a very, very, very good team. But I think we're a good team that's going to improve as the year goes on. I really do believe that. But as far as those tournaments are concerned, I think it's good to challenge your team. From the time the ball was tipped against Auburn to when it stopped or when the game ended, there was never a point in that game where I didn't think we could win it. Same thing with Alabama. If you in the last minute of all the games we played, after 39 minutes, we've had a chance to win all of them. So late game execution, details, getting better at the little things. You just got to keep working on that.
We'll go to Joseph Duarte. Joseph, go ahead, sir.
Kelvin, on Butler, it seems like their strength is in the front court with Telford, Brooks, McCaffrey, and I think it's Bizjack. Is that an accurate assessment of sort of what you see from them?
Yeah, they're really good up front. Thad, I think the last time I coached against Thad, he had Greg Oden and Mike Conley. But Thad's been one of the game's better coaches for a long, long time. And now that he's at Butler, they're playing like a Thad team. Heavy isolation in space, giving his best players a chance to play one-on-one, as most teams do. Telford gives a hard matchup. Because he's 6'7" and he weighs 225 and he's a 3. McCaffrey's a tough matchup because he's a 50% 3-point shooter and he's a 4. That's one of the things that we have been lax on is getting our 4s out to the 3-point line to guard the 3-point shooter better and not making mistakes on screens. The Pierre Brooks kid transferred from Michigan State. I thought he was going to be a really good player there, and now he's a really good player at Butler. He might be the toughest matchup because he's 6'6", 240. So between their point guard, who's 6'4", 190, and then they go 6'7", 225, 6'6", 240 in the backcourt, that means LJ's got to guard one of them. Emmanuel will guard the other. Milos obviously will guard the point guard, so this is a really difficult matchup for us.
We'll go back to Chris Baldwin, please. Go ahead, Chris.
Kelvin, you mentioned pace and getting some easier baskets. Does this have the makings of a good transition team, and can that play to Milos' strengths maybe?
Yeah, we've been working on that a lot, Chris. That's an area that the problem with being in a tournament setting is you don't really have time to practice. You can't go back and fix something in a day, even though Thursday was Thanksgiving and Friday's the day before. You're not going to fix anything over the course of the day. I'd like to think, and there's no guarantees, but I'd like to think we're going to be better in transition Saturday. That's something we've been emphasizing. I think, uh, um, flip it around, fellas. Look at the way all these great offensive teams look when they play us. What's wrong with their offense when they play us? Over the last 7 or 8 years. Somebody's asking that coach, what's wrong with your offense? Well, sometimes it's not your offense. A good defensive team is going to cause problems. That's why they're like they are. Duke's the #1 defensive team in the country. It wasn't. There was something wrong with Auburn's offense last night. That Duke team caused them problems. Auburn's one of the top defensive teams. Alabama's the top defensive team. Iowa State. You're not going to look as good against San Diego State traditionally. We played 3 of the better defensive teams on our schedule, and they've exposed us. But that's also going to help us too. But being able to create space for whoever has the ball. When a guard gets the ball, he doesn't throw it. If Emmanuel or Mercy or Terrence or LJ, if they get a rebound, they're not going to throw it to Milos and run up the floor. Milos has to go run space. So working on our spacing, not just in the full court, but also the half court, where we can look to score earlier in the shot clock and not be so half court bound. If you want to see a rock fight, watch Iowa State and Houston play last year. Neither team could score. It was in the 50s at their place. I think we're up 2 with 37 seconds to go at their place, or down, or maybe we're up 1 or tied. I can't remember. But they couldn't score on us. We couldn't score on them. Nothing wrong with the offense. The defenses are really good. It's like, pick a team. How many home games have we won in a row? 22 or something? 20? So I don't know. But teams have a hard time coming in our gym looking like they're really good on offense because we shut them down. And these teams have been shutting us down. But I think we're learning how we're going to have to play against good teams going forward. And we've got to get better at our spacing. We've got to get better with scoring earlier in the clock and transition. But sometimes you don't run for a shot, you run for space. And I think Milos right now can be as good and probably better in transition for us than he is in the half court, because we struggle sometimes to get a paint touch. And that's why we were so great on the offensive boards, because we're rebounding, 10-foot shots versus 25-foot shots. So we have a clear understanding of what it is we've got to get better at. And I know I've got to talk about it because this is my media, whatever you call it. But that ain't solving no problems. When I walk down to that gym every day at 2:30 and strap that whistle on and start working with our kids and working with our staff, it's not going to get fixed in one day or one game. But I think once you've identified the areas you need to work at to get better, if you just keep working on it every day, even if it's incremental, you just keep showing improvement. We have great kids. They all have winning DNA. They've been winners ever since they've been here. And that's not going to change.
Got time for a couple more questions. We'll go to Joseph Duarte with one of them. Joe, go ahead, Joseph.
Joe, Joseph, what the hell did you do to your shoulder, man?
I had therapy this morning for a rotator cuff issue, so they made me ice it here for the next hour or so.
He's getting old.
I'll be in the John Houston's office here in a little while.
That's a good one to go to.
Kelvin, after the San Diego State game, you had mentioned about finding that guy or not having that guy right now. How does a person or player develop into that, or what do you look at that? I mean, a guy doesn't just wake up and become the guy. How do you make that happen, or how does a guy make that happen? to be
Well,
that guy?
sometimes it has to be done by committee. I've had a lot of teams over the years that didn't have a guy. You know, sometimes the coach has to do a better job of putting whatever guy that is in a better position to score. You know, one of the struggles we're having right now is getting our guards in the paint. You know, we've been working on some things this week that I think can help. But the biggest thing is getting downhill, but also getting confidence. When Quentin Grimes came here, for instance, he had no confidence, and that drove his personality. So we had to work a long time to get Quentin to believe in Quentin, and we have some kids that are going through that right now, and we're. Being a basketball coach ain't all about X's and O's, fellas. There's a lot of things that 18 to 23-year-old guys go through that, as a coach, you may not have signed up for it, but that's part of the deal. And we're having to work on a lot of kids, more so than usual, seems like. But let's just make sure we understand that we've been in a position to win every game we play, and our kids are going to win a lot of games as we go on this season.